Okay, in this video I have an old Radiola, AWA Radiola gramophone. Unfortunately missing some of the knobs. And this has got a record player in it. Unfortunately the tone arm's been pinched. Does it turn? It sort of does. And see, we've got the manual and stuff in here by the look of it, or at least the circuit and stuff. It's a Radiola 800G circuit code. It even tells you what each capacitor is and its voltage. Looks like it's probably for the right unit. Now, the speaker's just a normal sort of link. Doesn't run the power through the speaker coil or anything. Looks like someone's found problems with something there. We've got a 6V6GT, 6SQ, 7GT, 6SK7GT, 6J8G. Doesn't mean much to me. Switch one front, switch one rear, switch two rear. And there's another 6X5GT. Looks like it's at the diode. Must be, I'd say, because it's coming out of the transformer. Amalgamated Wireless Australia, York Street and Queen Street, Melbourne. And all that says. And instructions for operating. 5-valve AC operated table model phono radio, or radiogram, so a lot of people call them. Designed for the reception of medium and shortwave. That's got shortwave, has it? There's a switch there. International shortwave. 25 metre, 31 metre, 42 metre band, 49, 9 metre band amateur radio by the look of it, and oh no, sorry, it's 19 metre amateur radio. Oh yeah, so there's 16, that's going down to 14, what? Don't know what that is, and that was the 16 metre band, I think. South and Western Australia, I've got New Zealand channels on here. Queensland, so what are the New Zealand ones? 1YA, 2YA, 3YA, maybe? 4 is Queensland, 9, maybe all the white ones. And New Zealand and the yellow Queensland, not sure how they've done that. And we've got Victoria, Tasmania. No, they must just be the white ones of the main stations or something. Nice little dial in it. If nothing else, that might fit a large sort of floor model radio case I've got, though I think it might be a little small. Speaker grill's actually still intact. Installation. So actually give you a valve layout and stuff, because that was something people would fix themselves. Connection to the power supply. Of course, the silverfish have eaten a hole in it. Phonograph operation, service data, oh yeah, there's medium wave, 6 to 18 megahertz shortwave, normal AM broadcast, 60 watts consumption, dial amp replacement, switch off the power, remove the plug, two 6.3 volt, 0.25 amp MES lamps are used. Nice of them to tell you. Chassis is removed through the base of the cabinet, remove the control knobs, disconnect pickup cable and phono motor connection plug. Drive cord replacement. For installing dial cord or dial drive cord to print on a label which is affixed to the rear of the dial frame. Yes, they actually tell you how to fix that even. That's pretty good. A lot of people lived out in the country or somewhere couldn't just take it into the local repairer necessarily. And tells you what the different valves do by the look of it. Oh, it even gives you a voltage list, so that's better than half the service manuals, proper service manuals out there. And we've got the guarantee. The world's finest broadcast receiver. Guaranteed to be free from manufacturing defect and faulty material for a whole 90 days, so about 3 months. Didn't give you a very long warranty back then. Distributors or employees are not authorised to give any warranty or make any representations or otherwise on the verbal or otherwise on the company's behalf. Marks and numbers on radios shall not be removed or defaced. Not liable for labour or for any loss or expense arising from breakdown of any part, consequential damage, direct or indirect, For any repairs made or attempted to be made without the written sanction of the company. Oh, that's a KRHO maybe? Honolulu. 1 AM 15 kilocycles. So I guess that was one of the shortwave ones they picked up. Oh, what have we got here? 20th September 1938. I wonder if it's that old. It's pre-World War II by the look of it, so older than I thought. I haven't actually really looked inside. I just lifted the lid up and had a look. And they said they wanted $20 for it, so I thought, oh, it looks good enough as a display piece for $20. And it's got a nice little radiola badge in blue there, the AWA Radiola. Rather rusty old turntable. Yeah, she's loose in there, I think. Probably may have only been 78 anyway. One thing I do like is this cool little latch it's got. You lift it up, little piece spins and locks. Lift it a second time, and it drops again. So lots of cracks and stuff in the case. And looks like it's peeling off and stuff. Piece missing there though. I think there was a bit under the turntable somewhere. So I'll look at the back of this thing. Nice big piano hinge, I think they call those. Oh, what have we got here? A separate little box with one valve on it. Oh yeah, she's pretty old. Yeah, it says model 800G, I think that says there. And looks like the mains cord's been cut off. And oh, what have we got here? Dodgy rubber coated wire, which is just, yeah, you got to watch this stuff. Definitely don't plug these sort of ones in. Quite a bit of dirt and muck down in there. Nice big old speaker there, looks like it's still intact thankfully. And yeah, we've got the older style valves. Radiotron Australia. The old metal around the base on that one's probably the diode. Oh no, it might be in the front end, that one. Some old paper looking electrolytic, paper coated electrolytic capacitors. A massive tuning gang in there, tuning capacitor. Oh, is that the phono preamp or something? What does this do? Oh my god, it's actually got an old, actual proper 240 volt plug. God, I can hear that cable cracking. Listen to that. That's the old rubber coated wire. It's actually got like a surface mount power point in there to plug it in. So it's almost worth $20 for that probably, but I don't know if they're really worth that much. But these old plugs never had a strain relief on them or anything. What is it, a ring grip made in Australia? Of course AWA didn't make power points, but that's just like a standard off the shelf plug and power point. All the appliances had that, so at least, so that's the record player obviously. Someone's done a bit of a dodgy, I think that's just the earth wire hanging there, but look at this, just disintegrates. So at least you can unplug that, but I don't think any of this is going to be safe to plug in. I think I'm going to have to pull the guts out of this. I've got more wires. It looks like they're joined, so they're probably some voltage or thing on the coils of the motor to set it to 240 volts or something. But yeah, even that wire to the speaker. What have we got over there? Some weird plug or something round and brown on that speaker there. And then it's got a transformer on it. Needs a good clean out anyway. So that's the antenna going into there. Oh wow, it's got the old, don't think they're original, but it's got the old screw-on leg mounts there. I think they're pretty much the ones they used to have on the bottom of televisions and stuff, so someone's possibly added those in later. I better be careful tipping this up. Oh, I can see a bit of what is under there. There's something paper. I wonder if that's jammed in to fix something. I wonder what on earth that is. Now I've got to find out what that is. Probably just a cardboard box or something, but it says there's something on it. Don't know if I can get that out without destroying it. I'm sure it's not very valuable, whatever it is. Oh, cigarettes. There you go, I found an old cigarette packet. That might be collectible to someone. The Garrick cigarettes. Virginia filter tips. 20 filter tipped cigarettes. So they're filters, so I don't know when they first put out filter cigarettes, but part of a cigarette box anyway. Something obviously slid in there. WD&HO Wills Australia. I think Wills were behind some of the big cigarette brands even in the 80s and stuff. It sounds like a cigarette company name. Oh, that's kind of cool. But I don't know exactly how that worked, whether maybe they just had a bunch of cigarettes wrapped in that thing, but it's not like your old flip-top cigarette packets that were more modern. Well, I still break them, I guess, just no one can afford them anymore. But there you go, that's a nice little extra bonus in there. That's got a 3-4. The brewers used to have a little thing like that with two numbers in a circle with like a division sign between them, but I think maybe they had some sort of excise or something on these. No doubt the government had something like that. It's probably just an ID for the company of who should be paying excise or something. What does that thing say? I don't think, is that Sphinx? Might be Sphinx. It's a picture of a Sphinx. Yeah, it says Sphinx. So maybe it's the Garrick Sphinx cigarettes. Virginia. Oh well, that's a bit of fun. So we'll take this chassis off. Looks like all these big, again, like I said, I better be careful I don't tip onto the knobs or anything, but something's making a funny noise. Big flat blade screws. I don't know how that piece comes off. Someone's put glue. I think someone's glued bits of wood and that they've cut. Yeah, they look like definitely after factory. One random one there because they couldn't fit it in the corner. Maybe they would have had some weird legs on it in the day, but that's it came from a country area, so you expect a few bits of country stuff going on. Looks like it had felt strips. They might be factory down the sides. Although they got nails in them, so I guess it was thick enough, but that looks factory, so it probably just had two felt strips to sit on. But unfortunately the tone arm's gone. I'm not sure where the tone arm plugged into. This other little box plugs in. How's it held in there? Is that an original part of this radio? Almost looks like an add-on, but unless that's something to do with the shortwave maybe. Because I assume that chassis in there is probably basically your standard radio chassis, but I still can't see where the phono would have plugged into it. Or maybe this box has something to do with the phono. Has it got a oh, there's something around there. This looks decidedly homemade to me, but maybe that's... looks like a little Electronics Australia add-on or something. I wonder if it is. That's been screwed on from the top, I think, so we'll get that apart and have a look. So you take the knobs off, undo the screws underneath, you can tip it on its end and take 3 or so out of, I think there's 5 of them, and then just hang it off the end of the bench or something, take the other 2 out so the chassis doesn't slide. That little silver box in the back does look aftermarket, but we'll have a look and see whether it actually is afterwards. It's probably not on the circuit now. The chassis is sitting down in a little bit of a recess there, and doesn't just slide out with the turntable, so it looks like we've got to take the screws from above, but of course you've got to get the tray off, so I think we're going to have to bang on that, and maybe a bit of CRC or something on there. So we'll try and put a bit of CRC on there, around that shaft. The metal bit should lift off the thing hopefully, and my other hammer's up in the house at the moment doing some renos, so I've got a club hammer which is a bit excessive, but oh, there you go, came easy. That's just, I think that is a felt coating on it, though it looks like rust. It's probably just dirty, but it is a felt coated bit of metal. I think that's how they usually did them. I don't know, usually, sometimes at least did them on these. Oh, well that screw's loose. So it looks like a couple, the old idler, and it's very rotten. I've got a little mini light switch there to turn it on and off. So it looks like there's nuts underneath. That one obviously doesn't have one anymore. That's probably where our cigarette packet was somewhere. Oh, I've got a washer coming out, or 2 washers someone's packed it with. I'll put them back on that screw. Not that this thing's ever going to go again. But probably worth checking the motor and stuff, see if it's any good. the bottom just fell off. So maybe this thing doesn't come apart the way I thought. Looks like the bottom actually unscrewed. Oh man. Ah, so that bottom recess bit, see, we meant to lift it off. This is going to be fun. The speaker unplugs as well, by the way. Oh, it does have a drive cord replacement diagram there. So it's meant to come out the bottom. Well, there you go. And it's got this other add-on bit. Yeah, that's the speaker thing, that just unplugs. You put your hand down to the speaker and pull that off. Oh, well, I didn't realise that wood actually came off. Maybe I should have read the instructions a bit better. But yeah, there's definitely a piece of paper stuck on there showing where the drive cord or dial cord goes. What on earth is this little thing? A little pointy bit of, I think it's plastic or something. Don't know if that's part of it, could be anything, I guess. And this is just like an aluminium box with a few Ducons and stuff. That's a bit of a different looking Ducon cap there, maybe just an early one. And it's plastic coated wire. I don't know if this does have some plastic, or that might have been added in. Yeah, it does have some plastic, I think, wire on the dial lamps and stuff. Man, it's dirty. Yeah, it looks added on. One of the wires is just under it. Well, it's not even really under the screw anymore, it just came out. Is that meant to be someone's job at earthing something? Definitely looks added on. I get a feeling you could make some sort of added band thing or something from... Sure, I've seen a kit mention one of the old Electronics Australias or Radio and Hobbies or whatever they were back in the day. And there's our rubber coated cable. Quite good under here. But once it goes out of here, it seems to go very stiff. I know that bit going over to the turntable power socket there, which is just a normal everyday power point, that is getting stiff. So you have to be very careful. You don't want to apply power to these things if there's fraying rubber cables that can touch on the chassis and stuff, even though I'd probably just blow the fuse or whatever. But oh well, there you go. So it looks like most of the dirt and stuff came out on my bench. Lovely. Let's get rid of this main bit. Now I can't flick it to close it. I must look up, there is a way of cleaning the back of these dials without rubbing anything on them, because if you rub something on them there's a fair chance you're going to wipe all that stuff off. So yeah, that is a bit of an unknown. Hey, the Ducon caps there are the same, quite nicely printed little panels on them on paper. Got a nice big old, what you'd even call that shape. Someone's written something on there. EPT something, don't know. It's got something written on that one as well in yellow. I don't think something's chewed on that transformer, possibly a little bit, but not badly. Old aerial connection. I better put that wire back on while I remember where it went. Oh, it went under this screw. But I think this might be safe to plug in, probably with a dim bulb, since, you know, this is full of weird old black capacitors. I'm not even very familiar with those ones. This is a bit earlier than most of the stuff I've seen around. Most of it's post World War II stuff that you used to see around in Australia. Probably had to be a bit richer to buy it prior to World War II. But yeah, interesting. I don't know what these, they're some sort of variable coils or something. Yeah, a bit of almost plastic like. Big coated coil there. But other than that, yeah, pretty much all just point to point. It's a bit more simple than some. It doesn't have many, if any, tag strips. There's one for the 240 volts. Normally the chassis is covered in tag strips. And yeah, I don't see any of those simplex type mica caps. It's got some weird old black resistors. And these ones with the big long colour, instead of bands as such, little thin bands like these ones, it's the whole resistor body's covered. Half of it's green, half of it's red, and then there's like a bit of yellow added on. And that looks like, I wonder if that's that bit of circuit someone fixed. That one possibly has been added in later and it's a bit dodgy the way they mounted it. So yeah, nice old chassis, that's for sure. And earlier Arts and P label, manufactured, probably all the same stuff. Post office license necessary, Selex transfers, GW Green and Sons, Melbourne. Yeah, I don't know, can we date it by anything? I haven't noticed any stamps. Doesn't look like any of the transformers have a date stamp to prove that the date is what it said. Yeah, corrosion all over that. But I guess we'll have to go by the date on that thing. Hopefully that is the original warranty card. You never know with these things 100%. That's what we've got here. Does that plug on? Oh, that's a little pin. Oh, so there's two what looks like original connections here. A brown and a red one. And the lamp's falling off. The dial cord is actually, I mean, it's a real dial string, that one, I think, because it is actually made of a string, some sort of two strings twisted together. Yeah, it works though. Old tuning cap's moving and the pointer's going. Man, there's a bit of corrosion on that old cap, but it probably doesn't really care much. Bet that hasn't been used for a while. I don't think someone's joined it there. They've probably just put band-aids on it to insulate it where it's cracked. But yeah, that's getting very dodgy, that wire. Like I said, you can hear it go like that. When it makes that noise, we're going to have to replace the speaker wiring. And this old mains cord should make crunchy sounds. Oh, cotton's still good on it though, but yeah, that feels hard as hell, that stuff. It's already starting to break apart, I think. Yeah, it just breaks. Look at that, just turns to dust almost. Okay, I've given this chassis a bit of a clean up. I had a look online and this model actually comes up as 1948 on the Radio Museum. I did notice on the couple when I cleaned the top of this off, those two big, what brand are they? Those two big Ducon capacitors have 38 printed on the side of them. Couldn't really find anything else that determines whether this was late 30s or late 40s. Most of these valves seem to have been out around the late 30s. If some are first listed in the 39 catalogue, so it still means it could be out in 1938. I think one of them, of this valve types, has said it came out in around May 39, so who knows. It could be that it's a late 40s one. The radio station someone had put on the front of the manual there from Honolulu, that actually existed during World War II as a bit of a propaganda station from Radio America to feed to the Pacific, and it also had it in, I think, both English and Japanese language. So obviously part of the war effort, I guess. So it doesn't say though when that radio station stopped, so it may well have kept going for years after that. Quite possible to still be running in 48. So the war ended and went from 39 to 45. So it's not far after those Americans occupying Japan then, so maybe they kept it running. So I'm none the wiser really on that. But either way, it's you know, possibly a 1948 model. That 1938 stamp on that manual could mean nothing. Who knows why someone put it there. It's stamped on there twice and it's upside down relative to the rest of it, so may not mean anything at all. But anyway, I got this at least cleaned up so it's not as filthy to work on. Cleaned off the valves, cleaned off this old Bakelite socket and all the top of the dirt off the chassis. Still got a reasonable amount of corrosion there, but nothing too bad. So now I'm having a look at this wiring, and I found there was a little end piece on this speaker connector with a little brass piece in there that's been bent over like a little rivet. I assumed it was just a rivet, so I started using my side cutters to try and bend the top of it up so it could be reused rather than drilling it out, and it actually slid out, so that comes out. But look, it's not riveted right the way through, so you just got to prise that out. And then it's soldered here. I'm looking at where this wire goes. Looks like one of them blackish, or it must be the blue one maybe, or could it be the red that's gone dark? Goes to the chassis there. There's a yellow and a brown, or it must be yellow and the red. The colours aren't real clear on this. Go to these couple of terminals here, so that one's not too hard to change. Or I might just put something to try and separate the crack bits there. The mains cord comes in, goes across, and I think it actually might come up to this on-off switch. So that might be a bit more difficult. I also noticed this, whatever this wiring is here, goes to, it looks like that's the input of the transformer on this tag strip, so you can change the voltage there probably. That probably goes back to that switch as well. They seem quite nice and flexible still, but these two here that go off to the socket for the gramophone or record player, they are definitely hard and possibly about to crack. If I don't play with them, might be alright. The other option is just snip them off this terminal block. Now, I was looking in the manual for this thing. There was 3 different options of turntables from Garrard, and I still couldn't really find much info. Someone online thought that one of those models came out in the late 30s or around 1940, but couldn't find any info to definitely date those, so that was another path I went down. I looked at the addresses that AWA had in their manual, and both of them existed right across the period from possibly as early as the 20s and well into the early 50s at least. The newspapers only go up to 1954, so they're not much use beyond that, but it looks like the Melbourne and Sydney address spanned right over the whole period as well, just to make it more difficult. So it's really an unknown. May well be a 48, because they were certainly a lot more common, these radios, in Australia after the war. You don't see pre-war ones much around, mainly because they probably just got so old and obsolete that they got thrown out many decades ago. So we've got to really find where this mains wiring goes. I've just got this sitting on something on the transformer, so I'm not risking breaking the valves. And I gave this radio dial a clean up. Looks a lot better. Still a little bit of dirt on it, but got the worst off the outside. But yeah, not sure how you can clean the back of it safely. But I'm guessing this on-off switch, can't really see where that cord goes. I don't really want to remove the front dial and stuff if I can help it, but that must be the cord there. It's purple, but then it changes to some other colour. I think goes down. Oh no, that comes to this pot here, whatever that cable is. Oh no, there it is. It's jammed under this pot. Yeah, it definitely comes up. That's the earth. Crack. And the brown wire goes into one of these pins, and I assume there's a blue or whatever there. So that's our mains input. Looks like you can just take that switch off. Has it got nuts? It does have nuts, of course it does. Always best to check so you don't lose them. And there's probably some tiny washer in there as well. If we can loosen that off, we might be in business here. A little washer. Hopefully we can just slide this out. Bit annoying that they didn't run it to the terminal block, but ran it all the way up to the switch. But in those days, I guess they were trying to save every last piece, which meant they didn't want it going to a terminal block. Now I'm seeing why they tell you how to restring the radio dial, I think, because although it's all self-contained besides where it goes around there, it is. Because I think I'm going to have to at least partly lift this front panel up. Oh, the other thing I found while online poking around looking at pictures and stuff, there is the odd picture of these, but most of them aren't labelled as this model. They're just auction sites of an AWA Radiol or whatever. There was an AWA 615T radio, which looks like to be the same chassis, but just in a box as a radio only. So that's the other thing I found. That's also listed on the Radio Museum as 1948, so maybe it genuinely is 1948. It's hard to know. Now what have we got here? This is, there's a circlip. Yeah, it feels like the whole panel's stuck on that. Oh, there's another screw there, that's what I want. Being careful not to press up against the glass. And maybe I need a bigger screwdriver for that. I can just lift this end up a bit, but I've got to be careful. Of course, it's on the worst possible angle. And you can barely get to the nut on the back of the bracket. Okay. Right, at least loosen it. Of course, that's in the worst position as well. Can't get access to it. I don't think I can get a nut driver in there. Actually, there's a second screw, and that's welded or riveted to the chassis. Son of a... Well, they didn't make mains cord replacement easy on these things. Yeah, that bracket is really holding stuff together. Just a bit of pain. I guess the other option is just cut it, leave it in there. Or can I can probably prise it up a bit with a screwdriver, might be enough. Yeah, that might sort of get things moving a bit. We've got an extra earth wire here. Oh yeah, that's the blue and green that go back to the transformer. They definitely want replacement at some stage. And there's a bit of dust there I missed. Couldn't really get to that. And now the bracket's moving around a bit, that's not that tight. Double pole. Quite nicely made switch, still works really well. So say 1 amp, 240 volt, I think it does. But yeah, one thing on this is nothing's seized up surprisingly. Oh, something Sydney. Alpha Eng Co Limit, I think, so Alpha Engineering maybe. Sydney, and it's got plus plus minus minus written on it, so I assume that's which ones are switched together. And this is why I need a bit more wire length so I can actually get to this thing to unsolder it. So we've got green, oh there's green blue. I assume two incoming on the plus and, or an incoming and outgoing on the plus and incoming outgoing on the negative. That's our red, so that'd be our active. These older cords are black and red normally, colour coding. Actually, I might, oh, we can untwist this, can't we? Oh, there's a bit of cotton wrapped around it. Keep everything nice and neat. That's better. Now I can actually get some stuff loose. Yeah, that's just all, that's the black on. I'm pushing back and I'm not seeing any insulation. That's the blue. Yes, the blue's on one of the negative. Green's on one of the negative. Well, we don't even need to well, I guess we better unsolder it. Technically we don't need to, but I do need to solder something new on there, so I better get the old wire off. I think they do make this cloth covered cable again now. You can buy like stuff to fix retro gear like this up. So that's all that really earths it, is it just goes onto there, this shaft, and where that bolts onto the chassis. Stuff falling off everywhere, it's just disintegrating. So I think you can get cable to make your radio look right again, because you don't want a horrible grey plastic cable coming into this thing. But for test purposes it'll certainly be fine. Now I think, are these just on the surface or have they wrapped them around like they usually do? They look a bit like, hopefully someone's just, beautiful. They didn't waste time putting it through the eyelet and wrapping it around. Like it really makes it that much stronger anyway. So black and blue went together, red and green, bit of a weird combo. I shouldn't be using green for mains stuff that really should be used for earth, but anyway. But blue's alright for neutral because that's what they have now. Okay, get our little bits of heat shrink out. So they're the wires going back in. I think I'll just leave them for now. Let's try and remove this. It's got a big knot in it for cable strain. So I'll cut that off and I should be able to drag the, well, we'll just shorten that. Drag that knotted bit out. Chuck the bit off the outside out, and then we should be able to drag this bit one way or the other. Again, I probably should shorten it as much as possible. Here we go, we can get it out alright, I think. That's got it. Well, I guess the other option at the moment, I don't care if it's got an on-off switch. I probably should have just left them on there, come to think of it. What we'll do is I'll put the blue and green back on, and then I can just bypass this switch and just solder to that terminal block at the other end of this blue and green. That'll do for now. Yeah, let's just put that back. That's going to be live, so I've got to be very careful with that. So we just need ground to go to the chassis. We've got that blue and green come across. Yeah, it's the ones that go. Well, I guess we could even. Does that have an earth on it? It does, I think. Hey, it's soldered to the chassis there, I think. So we could actually make a lead with a plug. Don't ever do it, but you can make a lead with a plug with the prongs live on it. So a plug-to-plug lead, which is highly dangerous because way too risky that you'll forget what you're doing. But what we can do is just undo the screws here, hook everything into this socket because this is soldered to earth and feeds back where we want it. But I'm not going to make one of those leads because they're just too dangerous. And even this is going to be a bit dangerous. I think we might be able to poke them through that because I don't want live wires everywhere. Into the chassis is a perfect place to put your hand and electrocute yourself, even though these things are generally dangerous all round. So let's go through the original faceplate. Hopefully I didn't just push the original wire back out the other side. Don't think so. Sort of thing that can happen though. I should be able to carefully slide that back into place. As long as I get it close enough so it's covering everything up. And we better do a check. Wakey wakey. Ground is ground. This will go to one of these. Well, we'll go to both of them probably. Should measure across it as a transformer, not the ground. That's another one to check. Well, that's probably safe to actually plug in. Let me just check that speaker wiring again. Where did I say they went? That's right, it's pretty obvious. One goes to the chassis, so we can check that one easy enough. If I can find which one it is. Not that one. A little bit of a flick there. Oh, well, no. There. So middle one's ground, which is the bluish one, which looks about right. One of these should go to there. And they don't seem to be shorted, so I think that's safe to hook up. Might just insulate it a bit. they're all cracked, of course, in the same place pretty much. And that's probably why someone's done a band-aid repair. The old plastic band-aid was the thing everyone had at home to use as insulation tape. I'll just do that. There's another one, another crack right next to it. And just so I can't touch it, and in case there's anything high voltage there, and it can't touch on the chassis or anything. That should do it. Now ideally, I might take the speaker out of the box because it probably wants to clean it anyway. And I really want to know if this thing does start running. Okay, I got the speaker out of the cabinet. All the nuts are loose. I think someone's been fiddling with it before. A little bit of damage to the cone in a couple of places. Maybe a little bit more there as well. Yeah, the more you look, the worse it looks. Interesting, this has also got a 38 on it as well. Whether that means anything could just be coincidence. It's also got a 9356, 7000 on the transformer, XA2. Of course, no dates anywhere, just to make life difficult. So I guess the next thing to do is switch it on there, and we'll switch it on to the power point, and we get nothing. That'd be right. Oh, wait up. What did I have the other switch for? Oh, well, that might have been to bypass it, so that's not real bright either. So it's probably in bypass mode, but no, we don't seem to have any action whatsoever. Even though bypass, well, I can see that valve's getting warm though. Oh, here we go, light bulb's doing something. I would have thought there'd be a little bit more inrush or something, but that's probably a good sign that it wasn't. Obviously you don't draw much current as far as valves and stuff until everything's warmed up and actually emitting current sort of thing. Getting current flow going. That looks like there's an orange glow in that one, I think. Yeah, one of the heaters under the two little diode bits or whatever they are. Yeah, let's have a look at what we've actually got settings on here. That's treble, volume. Power we don't care about. Range, I don't know which range we're on. Let's see if I can get one of these knobs back on there. Medium and short. Tuning. Well, I would have thought if it's going to warm up, we've got no dial lamps. They're probably blown. I guess I pulled one out of that other old radio chassis. Unfortunately, I broke one of them trying to get the holder off. And they can be absolute mongrels to get out of these things. And I know one of these is a bit loose. So let's maybe get rid of that loose one. Always nice to have a dial lamp to let you know it's running. They didn't make very good holders for the lamps, unfortunately. Just a bit of pressed tin or something. They didn't always work the best. So that one seemed to work most of the way until the very end. So maybe the globe was badly made or has been bent or something. I think that was a good globe. Oh, we've got a globe there, so that's always nice to have, just to remind you that it's on and all the rest. But I don't think this is going to do much by the look of it. Okay, so I suspect we've got no B plus here. I can just look at any random valve, I guess. Oh, what this one in the middle is. But if we go to chassis, we should get some high voltage, but nothing. Well, that's not a good sign. Nothing. These are the pins that go to the valve, I assume, well, they must be. Nothing. And I think those two are joined together. Nothing, so that's not a good sign. Now somewhere here was a circuit and stuff. I remember seeing a rectifier. There's our transformer. We've got a rectifier which is a V5 6X5GT. So the heaters come out of one winding, not surprisingly. You also go to that valve by the look of it. Off to the heaters and dial lamps. Although that one only seems to go, it must have an internal connection or something there, is it? Oh, let's hook back to that. How do they get that other connection back to the rest of the heaters anyway? Oh, maybe some one of these must be hooked to ground, I reckon. We've got another winding split into two bits. So it's it looks like it's a dual diode, so half-wave rectifier, I guess. That one must be, or goes via a resistor to ground. Not directly, those two, and we would have a B plus out here through filter cap, series inductor to smooth it out as well. And I did see a voltage list somewhere. What else we got here? Where's the valves for starters? I assume it'd be the one right next to the transformer. 6X5 GT, I think that was it. Yeah, so it's the one closest to the transformer. I was just measuring this 6XQ7 thing in the middle. Probably explains why the light bulb isn't doing much. So it did light up a bit at first, suggesting valves were trying to get going. So that's our thing, and we want... Oh, here it is. Socket voltages, rectifier, cathode to chassis, 300, and anode to chassis, which is your 280 AC. So it's like a double anode, one cathode out. I assume that's how that works. There should be 280 across there somewhere anyway. And yeah, they go via both windings via resistors. And then C34, is that on the, does that show that on the chassis? It'll be one of those big Ducons, I assume. It doesn't give you capacitors. It's one of those two big caps. I'm guessing that one's closest to the transformer. Where is it? Up there somewhere. Oh yeah, over there near the, up behind that dial lamp. And you can't really get anywhere near it. So let's poke around this other valve. That looks like ground to me there. We'll check it anyway. Nothing. Not the easiest thing to get hold of. Oh, we've got 355 volts. So the rectifier's working by the look of it. So I wonder that cap hasn't blown up, but I assume it's made for, I think I saw somewhere they made for 500 volts or something, and that's probably why. So it looks like DC's coming out. Does that go to that other pin? If I can make a connection to it. It's pulsing and carrying on. No, I don't think it does. The wire, I would assume, goes to that capacitor. Oh, what's that middle valve? Does that get the same voltage? You'd think it would. That's our 6SQ7 SKSQ. That's our B plus. It comes along here to that one. It comes along here to that one. Of course, that's probably the only valve in here doesn't have. Well, it's got to have high voltage somewhere, surely. Oh, what up? That's the B plus that goes through R17. So we could have an open circuit L14. Oh, I wonder if that's that other transformer in there. We've got oh yeah, because the speaker transformer's on the speaker in this one. So that's that other, probably what that other big inductor that looks a bit like something's been chewing on it. Be just my luck to have something like that open circuit. And how do we get to it? There's wires on the underside by the look of it. I guess I'll just measure from, so that wire there is our B plus, probably out of the rectifier. So if we just measure to something that it should go to on the other side of that inductor, where do I put the circuit? which is, oh, we've got a switch. Oh, one of the speaker terminals. The red wire to the speaker where are they on this terminal block somewhere? Well, why doesn't that wire go straight there? Oh, because it goes via the, well, that's looking like a lot like it's probably open circuit. Got a wire there, of course I can't see where it goes. Yeah, that goes to the B plate, that goes to the capacitor. Here's a red wire up, so that red wire goes to what? It goes to another capacitor. Oh, does it have a big capacitor on the other side? Maybe that's what it does. Big inductor. Oh, there it is, C32. So maybe that is across the inductor after all. So I think if we go from that cap on that pin to that cap on the middle pin, we're friggin' open circuit. I think we've got a dud. I think those two red wires go up to that transformer. I guess I could just, I don't know if I should risk clip leading across there without knowing 100% sure that is the part. Because we can just bypass this. I'm not sure, I don't think that does any current limiting or anything like that. I mean, it possibly could limit inrush currents or something, but oh, that capacitor feels a little warm. Not surprising, I guess, given its age. So that's probably maybe all we had originally, was just a bit of current into the capacitor or something on that lamp. With the age of these and the damp condition they're in and stuff, there's always a risk these bit of moisture or something will get in and corrode one of these inductors. Now I don't know what those screws do on the other side. One's dropped through. That one's under a bunch of wires, so it hasn't gone anywhere in a hurry, I don't think. It's definitely got two red wires. Can I get to it? Just about. They're still attached. And I think we're definitely open circuit. So I just want to prove, I think that one goes to this cap here. Just make sure I'm bypass. I guess I could just, can't solder that maybe. That's another option. Oh yeah, I probably can. Or I could just put a clip lead across the actual thing. And these two pins here. Come on. Grotty old solder. There goes one wire. There goes the other. Probably hundreds of meters of fine wire. I don't know, something, it looks like something's damaged it or chewed on it or something, so it's possible. I was going to say, where's that screw that came loose? Well, there it is. Possible it doesn't, I can't see any copper there, but it's possible that's a problem. I might put, if I can, put the nut back on that one so it just can't fall out. But that's a major problem. If that, a major part, well, that's gone in this thing, potentially it's not going to be exactly restorable. But I think I am safe to just hook it up bypassed. Guess we'll soon find out. Let's save all these little bits first, by at least attaching them together. Okay, well, I've got a lamp in series. Still nothing happening. Let's check we've got voltage there, I guess. Oh, something's making a noise. 200 and something volts going up. A lot of humming going on. It's coming through the speaker, I think, not... Yeah, humming's coming out of the speaker, not out of the transformer, that's the main thing. We're getting a bit of light globe action. Nothing's smelling too bad, it's smelling a bit, but... So whatever that hum is, could be one of these caps is shot, more than likely would be. Because the volume doesn't alter the hum. What's that one meant to do? That's a tone control, isn't it? Oh, phono, radio. Oh, phono, radio. Ah, that's radio. Supposedly. Something does smell a bit off. Or not. Short wave. Medium wave. Oh! Might be a AWA. Something does smell a little unpleasant there somewhere. Hook it up without electrocuting myself. Let's do it with a clip lead maybe. Might just be the smell of dust and rat droppings and stuff over a long period of time. Volume doesn't do a lot. Sounds loud or very loud. Oh. There's something there.
Primary care was getting harder and more expensive, and that medicine we're getting. So those have been the areas that we are focused on in our clinic.
Get rid of the lamp.
The bulk billing incentive, and that bulk billing is that point to the back of the process. Lots of recommendations. Repeatedly say, and yet what we don't have is a government that rules to actually of the it's 28 fine on AWA Radiolagram, and you hear the voices through the wire.
Well, it's not very good, but it does work. Oh well, we're getting something out of it. I guess that's better than nothing. Probably the first sound it's put out in a long time. But yeah, not overly great. Okay, I might give this thing a quick capacitor check. Probably the next thing to do, since it's sort of running but not the best. Might as well check, feel these things out, make sure these big caps are discharged before doing any sort of putting your ESR meter on it, or touching anything for that matter really. Although actually if one cap, now that we've got rid of that choke, they're basically connected together anyway. Some of these caps look a bit, I don't know if that's melted, that might have been someone in there soldering, maybe even in the factory. I don't know much about these black caps, if they're good or bad, damage prone or whatever, but normally this would be full of those Duke on paper caps, which is the other reason I thought it might have been an earlier made one, but who knows. I'm no expert on valve stuff. I say most of the stuff I saw would have been 50s, 60s sort of era. And I'm sort of used to what they look like. Oh, that's a bit of a random reading. Find a good earth here somewhere. That's not an earth. 0.3, that should be a good one. It's probably going to measure the same because they're both in parallel, I guess. Now, are any of these caps electrolytics or anything? I wouldn't know what most of these caps even are. That's the two big electrodes. I think this list in the manual tells you something, or was it with the circuit, I think. You have all these capacitors, mica, air trimmer, silvered mica, air trimmer, which are those, probably those big plastic looking things. 0.1 microfarad, 200 volt. Paper, mica padder. Tuning, paper. So I assume all these black ones are probably those, well, some might be micas, some might be paper. So are they polarized? I don't know. They're all 0.1 microfarad, 0.2 microfarad. Oh, there's a 16 microfarad big one. That would have been one of those big. Where are they? C34 and C32. That's C32. It's only 16 microfarad. C34 is only 8 microfarad. Power transformer. Oh, that's right. There's a 40 cycle per second versus a 40 hertz. I don't know if there was parts of Australia that had 40 hertz back then, but I think I've ever seen a 40 hertz transformer before, or heard of a power grid at 40 hertz. So where is it? That is, what's L14, so it's not a T, it's an L14 filter choke. Tells you what each core there is. Other thing we could have is some of these horrible high value resistors are going to open circuit, or high 50 microfarads. So is that like picofarads or something? 9 microfarads, 3 to 25 microfarad air trimmer. Didn't even notice that before, but there's a lot of double mu symbols there. So yeah, it's all just in microfarads or microfarads. Well, there's just nothing in between. I guess I don't think they had nanofarads early on, did they? They were a later invention. So it's probably either in picofarads or microfarads. No nanofarads at all in those days. Yes, there's only 2 electrolytic caps, which are the obvious ones on top. So you probably more need a capacitance meter or something to check like that. I thought maybe with the amount of hum that was those filter caps, but they're quite small filter caps, so maybe that inductor had something to do with trying to keep the hum down. I don't know if we ever got up to our 300 volts, that could be another problem. Don't know why the volume control wouldn't go right down. So many little things. What is our volume exactly? We've got a pot there. Are these the actual pins we're hooked to? G, K, D, D, P, H, H. It's 1. Oh, they're heater. Yeah, so they are, I think. S1. I don't know what S1 is. G is grid, maybe. Makes sense if that is the volume control. Oh, there's our pickup. PU, so that's where that probably is those 2 pins on the end, is where the other thing's connected to, is probably our phono input. That's the selector switch. And it switches between that and probably this. It looks like a shielded cable. That would be our output of our IF. Or does it go through that valve? D. What's D on a valve? P. You got grid, anode, cathode. K is the ground. P and D. Grid, cathode, SG, heater. No, I don't know. Oh, plate. One of them's the plate, isn't it? That is the anode, I think. It goes to a little bar. P. Yeah, it goes to that little bar. That's the cathode. So I think all the anode, the plate. Which might also be an indicator of how old this thing is. So it's got 2 plates here in the diode, 1 cathode and 2 heater terminals. So yeah, so okay, P is, I forgot they had the term plate. So this is the amp output, I guess. Yeah, that goes into the speaker transformer. Other side, oh, it actually goes to the high cathode out of the main diode pack on one side, so it's going to ground this valve, I guess, into the plate. Cathode is through a resistor to ground, yeah. Heater, something else connected to ground, maybe just a shield. SG, so you got gate, grid. Oh, there's a second, like a SG, second grid. What do they call, I don't know much about this stuff. That's got an SBP or something. That must be the plate, P for plate. This has got 3, so is that like a triode or something? Grid, SPB or something, which is a second grid-like device, and there's a third one called SG. I'm pretty clueless about how these valves actually work. OP, OG. Oh, it's got like that's a second, completely second little diode or something in there, or second valve. Then you got your main plate. That's got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, plus a little side plate and grid. Does it tell you what that valve is? As in, I think they only said what they did. IF amplifier, it doesn't tell you what sort of type of valve it is. So let's assume that's the volume, 12 through a cap. Oh, that goes to the grid on that thing. So does that feed back, audio in, audio, so that must be a preamp. That probably comes back out here. I don't know, it's to ground, doesn't matter potentially. Maybe back into this one. Oh, into the grid, so that's most likely where you get your signal in. Possibly a bit of feedback through R17 from the speaker, or it could just be a voltage from that B+, I guess. It's got an SG, which goes to the full voltage, is that? Yeah, B+. Plate, that's right, comes via the transformer into the plate. Cathode to ground, yeah, so that's amp output. I think that's a preamp. That's your IF output transformer. What's this other switch? Is that the same switch? Switch 2. That's the switch. Oh, S2 front and back, yeah. So the other side of that switch, I don't know what that does. Takes the B+ and shoves it. Well, that's kind of joined together. And they're joined together. No idea. Or does it just come out here eventually? How do we get onto a switch? One is your, yeah, this must be it, switching in different inductors here, so I assume that changes the frequency between shortwave and normal wave, normal broadcast frequency. Okay, well, I've done a little bit more research on this unit, and what I did notice, I pulled the record player out of this thing, and according to the manual, there's 3 different types of Garrard turntable using these things. And I hadn't took much notice of this thing, but once I looked underneath it, you can see it's been actually butchered. Bit cut out there for that post where the platter sits. Another piece cut out there for some more metal work. This plate, which I've now set in the right position, was actually over where you can see that line. So there was a bit of the hole there for the tone arm sticking out. And I've actually removed this mech. That's when I realised someone had actually modified this thing. a bit of country repairs or improvements going on there. So they've actually, I think this might be one of the original Garrard mechanisms. Looks like it kind of fits on this, assuming this top plinth is correct, and I think it is. Seems to all be original. I'm not sure about that piece on the arm, but they've cut a massive hole out of the metalwork, removed the old motor. Some bit of bakelite or something was here, has been broken off. Not sure what these bits did. Obviously some sort of mechanism for something, probably missing a couple of springs by the look of it. So that's been massively modified, and interestingly, when I looked at this turntable part, this is what really got me, is it's actually a BSR motor in it. So I thought, well, that's not a Garrard. And once I realised that, that got me to thinking about this little unit. And of course, what I should have realised straight away is that's your new input. This is just some sort of preamplifier someone's built. So I'm guessing they upgraded the turntable to possibly a much newer one, or relatively newer one. And it probably had instead of those horrible old metal needles, steel needles that they had in a lot of the early 78 players. If you look at this one, the original I'm sure would have been just a 78 player. This has actually got 45, 78 and 33. So it's made for the newer discs. Probably not the old shellac 78s. More the micro groove, so I'm guessing it's probably had a moving coil, or could have still been a ceramic cartridge, but it would have probably had a much smaller needle, like the more modern ones with a sapphire or something. So it would have produced a much lower output, no doubt. I think those old steel needle things would be belting the hell out of the crystal pickup, because they're just a steel pin, almost like a pointy nail or something. Pretty crude design. So this, I looked up this valve, this 6SN7, and it can be used as a dual valve in there, and it can be used as an audio amplifier amongst other things they recommended it for. So that makes sense. These are the new connections for the pickup, of course only mono, and then it amplifies it and then puts it into the original input for the original pickup. So that explains what that all does. I was a bit confused as to what this was doing, or whether it was an external input, but it makes sense that if they put a lower sensitivity type record player and tone arm in there, shame the old tone arm is gone, so we don't know what it actually was. I couldn't find really any info on these old early BSRs or the early Garrards, but they do show a couple of these little small players that have a similar setup with a separate tone arm and a similar shaped sort of piece of metal like this, basically the same setup, except this actually does have the tone arm on it. Some look like they just have a separate tone arm and then a separate motor piece. This switch has been added in by the look of it, because you can actually see that's been cut rather crudely into there. I'm pretty sure this metalwork's original, and I think I've got this mounted on the original holes. They actually had it skewed off to the, or tilted around at that end more. So possibly these screws are original, but someone's really hacked the hell out of it, so none of that's original anymore. This cord needs replacing anyway, same old cracked rubber. And while I was poking around trying to work out the date on these things, I was looking at some old adverts for, what are these, radiolagrams, I think they call them. So not just a radiola like the radios, I think there's radiolas, radiolettes or something for the small ones, and radiolagrams. I actually found one from 1940 that was in a very similar wooden case to this, but it looks like the speaker grill was a bit different, and it had some more fancy trim around the actual radio dial. And though the model, unfortunately can't read the old newspaper thing because it's got the model number next to it. It looks like 800, but you can't actually tell, so maybe this 800G is an upgrade or something. Maybe they put out a similar one, not sure if the chassis was the same. But they're definitely in the later 40s, you can find an ad for an actual 801, which I think, by the look of it, the only difference for it with an 801 is that it's got a automatic changing record player on it. I don't think this actually mentioned automatic changes, but they don't give much details. General, 3 types of Garrard units. Type S, rim drive. So in other words, the idler wheel, I guess. Constant speed, which revolves the turntable at constant speed for all recordings. So I guess 78 only. Then we've got this VD15, I think it's a type V deck is what I found. D15 is the type of motor. So variable speed. speed which is manually adjusted by moving the speed regulator in the slow or fast direction. Interestingly, this one has something on here to say 78 fast or slow, so maybe this is that one. Maybe this is originally had that Garrard V-deck. And then with the AC7, this unit differs from type 15. Oh yeah, this was 240. Oh, that's actually the VD15 has a 240 volt 50 hertz motor, or cycles per second. And the AC7 uses a 240 volt 50 cycle per second. So this is more likely the 7E. Thus, yes, that's not called a V or S. Yeah, I don't know what used 40 hertz. Maybe some country towns or something, early power generation. So we probably had this AC7 because it does have that manually adjusted by moving the speed regulator and the slow or fast direction. So it's not multi-speed as in different RPMs of records. It's just 78 with a bit of adjustment. And I think the other model is just a different version of this. The 801G looks identical from the picture I found of one. Online you can actually, the Radio Museum doesn't have much info on this model, no picture or anything I don't think. There's no circuit, nothing, just a bit of info that it existed. The 801 they do actually have some more info on it. And if you look on Electro-Tanya, they actually have the full service manual, which could be handy for this one because it shows a diagram of what all these parts are, which capacitor is which. So that'll be really handy because these valve chassis just trying to work out what's what. A real pain unless you're familiar with the valve pinouts, which I'm not. But if it actually labels each resistor and capacitor on a diagram of what it is, makes life a lot easier to measure each thing and know where you're at. But you can get the full service manual for the 801. I think it covers a couple of other, like a large, I think one smaller, possibly a smaller mantle model, and a larger like console, floor standing console model. These are considered like a sort of small, table top sort of mini console or something. So with a bigger speaker I guess and bigger wooden cabinet on them, but a tabletop model. So there's a little bit of info on them, but very little out there, very little advertising, and I wouldn't be surprised if leading into World War II they probably didn't do much through the war period, so maybe there was an 800 or something that was very similar. And then they modernised the cabinet a bit, possibly using a similar chassis, and just put it out a slightly different model post-war because they would have been more busy doing military stuff, I would think, and developing that over the war period. And a lot of this domestic radio stuff would have at least dropped massively in production numbers, if not completely. The volumes would have gone right down, I would think. So it's a bit hard to say for sure, but it looks like this model probably is the late 40s model, though it could be based on earlier stuff. But that other one, which I'm, like I say, not sure if it's an 800 or some other model, but it seemed to have the same 5 pots in the same positions and stuff. And the cabinet looked very similar, but just a bit different trim on it. Whereas the 801 looks identical from the not the best quality picture I've got of it, but it looks like it's, I think there are actually pictures of the units online as well. That's right, I did find some actual photographs of 801s online. They're a lot more common, it seems. And yeah, they tend to have, like, I think some of them have a white coloured turntable on top, so that would be the, and obviously you've got the extra arm and stuff because it's a auto changer. I think one of them had an enormous gear sitting above the chassis, so it's part of the auto changer, some enormous big gear almost the size of the platter underneath, which looked a bit weird. But at least we found a little bit more info on these things, and yeah, I've worked out that this one is somewhat been butchered in the turntable department. I assumed it was roughly the original turntable with some loose bolts and bits and pieces, but that's probably why that, I think there was a grommet under one of the bolts, and that cigarette packet was probably there to stop some vibration on the other side. So I've had a bit of country repairs done on it, or I guess a country retrofit of probably a later model. And again, don't know if this looks an awful lot like a kit build type thing. Though of course in those days you couldn't go to Dick Smith and buy a kit, you just basically had instructions how to make your own. So I suspect this, like I say, could well be a project somewhere in like a cartridge preamp to fit older model and upgrade these older things. There's probably something in Radio and Hobbies or a similar magazine on that. Definitely a dodgy pot. Is there any voltage on that thing, I wonder? I'm not real familiar with valve stuff and what the story is, but no voltage there, so I'm going to see if I can ground that out. Doesn't make any difference. So it's not coming through the volume. I'm guessing it's not that dicky pot. It's becoming quiet because I'm touching earth. Let's photo. Let's put something. I shouldn't even be touching that, but that doesn't seem to do anything. That doesn't seem to do anything. Shouldn't really have my fingers on. Makes a little bit of noise, but it seems to be rather dead. Sure, that should be humming like anything, but maybe these things are really deaf. That's why they put the preamp on it. Well, I guess the other thing is I can touch the input to that, but that doesn't do anything either. So that's interesting. We don't seem to have any phono input. Goes through a capacitor. God, has someone been in there as well messing with it? Possibly. Yeah, I can say that cap's not connected, I don't think. That would probably be the issue. I'm not going to put my finger on anything in these things because there's always a risk of high voltages. That resistor's loose as well. What the? God, how much is the B plus in this thing too is the other thing I wanted to check. 300. It does get up to 300 volts. I think that's the ground side. So maybe they've done that to remove an input capacitor and a resistor to ground. Where was it in? Oh, it's these two. They removed C33 and R11, is it? Because they basically were shorting the signal to ground. So that signal comes into the switch and then should go to that volume control. Dare I touch? Nothing. Oh, there it is. Finally. So that should be in photo mode. Hopefully I don't electrocute myself on this. I'm guessing that switch is not doing its job or someone's fiddled with it. It's got medium shortwave. This thing's got phono radio, then it's got bass, mid, trip. So I wonder if it's got 3 positions for each one. Must be what that means, because it does look like a switch with more connections. So we can disregard, I think, the front end radio switch, and here it is. Yeah, so that's the phono input. One position's on phono, that one goes to ground, and it looks like it actually possibly grounds out the radio signal. It joins phono to the volume control, and if we rotate that more, we ground the phono and unground the radio and connect it to the volume control. The other part of it comes. Oh, what does this switch do? Looks like part of the radio. It's got one input there. Oh no, that only is in one position. That is connected. We've got B plus. I thought I saw the B plus hooked up to it. Comes in. And also got 3 positions. Well, that's the common. Wait, in one position it's radio, so it must put the B plus onto the radio. In that position, in the next position, well, the radio is basically off. The resistor and a capacitor, two positions are joined together, so that's probably the high and low radio on or off. So I think in one position it just disconnects the power to the radio, grounds the radio, and then you're in phono mode. Phono switches through. In one position you go through a resistor and a capacitor. The other position you just go to the capacitor. So I really don't know if that switch is actually working, but one part of it just switches, it should switch the phono. And what was at the front, did that say? Yeah, so we only care about this. So the back bit does the voltage switching, front bit does the, hang on, where's the front bit? It must be this upper, oh yeah, so this bit. So that's your radio in, I think. There's a blue, blackish wire. Is that ground? I think that might be ground. So that's the ground terminals. In one position it should be connected to that. Okay, beepies. That should be your radio input, I think. Yeah. Now that is now grounded, yeah, so that's the radio input. Let's switch through to the volume. Not switch through to the volume. Oh, it is connected. It's just deaf. Oh, wait a minute. Yeah, not connected to ground. Now connected to ground, so there's nothing actually wrong. Can't pick up any hum. That's better. I'll grab the power cord I can. There. So I've got hum now, so there's definitely hum coming out of that. Well, that's getting somewhere. So the shortwave works by the look of it.
Was about immigration, economy, some sound from the president-elect prior to the election the night before. Let's listen to that and I want to get your reaction on the other side.
Okay, I actually pull this choke apart. The metal work comes off very easy. Unwrapped a couple of layers of stuff here. Found a broken wire on the outside. Soldered a strand out of the old mains cable on there, and would you believe it's still open circuit. There is on the other side, there's a couple of spots where there was a bit of the paper stuff knocked off. There is a little bit of loose wire, oh it's over here actually on the bottom side, but I think they're still intact, almost opposite the other bit. But I think they're still intact. Almost opposite the other bit. But I think they're still intact. Almost opposite the other bit. But I think they're still intact. Almost opposite the other bit. But I think they're still intact. Almost opposite the other bit. But I think they're still intact. Almost opposite the other bit. But I think they're still intact. Almost opposite the other bit. But I think they're still intact. Almost opposite the other bit. But I think they're still intact. Almost opposite the other bit. But I think they're still intact. Almost opposite the other bit. But I think they're still intact. Almost opposite the other bit. But I think they're still intact. Almost opposite the other bit. But I think they're still intact. Almost opposite the other bit. But I think they're still intact. Almost opposite the other bit. But I think they're still intact. Almost opposite the other was expecting to find a blob of corrosion or something, but looks like it's a bit of damage caused it.
It was very, very brutal. It appeared after this.
There is a tone control here, low and high on the radio. I assume the same on the phono if that was working. Okay, just going to do a couple of final things with this thing. I don't think I actually filmed it, but I did pull, I think, this valve out, which is the one that feeds the amplifier. It's basically the preamp type thing, and the hum was still there. It is a 6SQ7 GT, which is actually a Phillips valve, so that's been replaced at some stage, I'm guessing. I don't think. 6SQ7 GT, yeah, that's the one. So I think if we take that out, we still get exactly the same amount of hum, so it's emanating from the amplifier. Let's turn it on and see what happens. Yeah, we've got filaments there. Here it comes. So yeah, just as hummy with that valve removed. So it's definitely in the output stage, or the power to it. I haven't actually put an oscilloscope on the power line to check. But I just started looking at this old AirZone radio I got, which is another chassis, and it's got one of these old speakers with the actual coil around the, I don't think there's a permanent magnet in there. Actually run power through that, but it's in exactly the same position. It's got the same setup. So you got your rectifier diode, transformer, rectifier into a filter cap. Then this one had a choke in it because it's probably just a design slightly later than these sort of 30s radios. In the 30s ones you had that field coil or whatever for the speaker, and then into the second filter cap, so it's basically the same, exact same setup. So I'm thinking I might even just wire this in, just clip lead it in across there, see if it makes any difference at all. This speaker needs quite a bit of repair. Cone's all torn and it doesn't move very well in there. It's got dirt and God knows what in it, so it's pretty well had its day. Might be repairable just to see if I can get that radio going. But now I've got to find which wires. It looks like, yes, we've got a couple of wires will come in and go to the speaker transformer, which is green and a darky colour, yellow maybe. Then we've got a lighter one goes in and the black. So I think they're the ones that go into this thing. And then we've got two other wires coming out of the transformer, which must go into the voice coil. Don't really want to mess this up. I assume it's a higher resistance as well. Let's see what it measures across those two different. Look at it. This one I think unscrews. Oh, we've actually got two joined together here, just to make life difficult. So we've got the black. So it must be the yellow goes in there, because, yeah, the other yellowish looking one, I'm not even sure what colour that is joined to the black. So black and yellow is the two big pins. And we have 1600 ohms. But of course we have a transformer on the other one, so it's probably not a lot of difference to that, to be honest. Uh-oh. Pretty sure this was good. 400 ohms. Some ways I would have thought it maybe be the other way around, but green, I think green definitely goes, yeah, under the transformer. So we don't want the green, we want the two big pins. And I can simply disconnect that two wires again for I don't know how many times I've done it. Where the other choke was, and I think we'll just wire this one in via clip leads and see if that reduces the hum at all. Let's turn it on and see if we get any smoke or anything out of the speaker. I think it's okay to power those coils up just like that, should be. Well, it's a bit quieter, I think. Oh, there you go. There is a slight hum there. Wow, that's really cured a lot of that noise. I'm not even sure what input we're on. That's radio, I think. Ah, wrong thing. Don't seem to have any radio noise. Oh, well, I haven't got an antenna, probably one of the reasons. Oh, God, yeah. And now I got noise that comes in after you let go. That's weird. Ah, so that inductor is a lot of the hum issue. Oh, that's good to know. Plenty of sound.
I can't even remember the last time I cried. I tried all the usual tricks. Some dog rescue videos, punching myself in the nose. Maybe it's the tea. Maybe it's survival.
Launched air attacks across Lebanon on Monday, killing at least a dozen people, even as officials claimed they were nearing an agreement on a deal. The Lebanese Minister for Finance, Mr. Khalil.
That's a more acceptable level of hum, that's for sure. That's the phono input, which of course now works after spending all that time messing around with it because I couldn't get any hum out of it. Probably helps that I'm hanging onto the power cord, power plug in case anything smokes. If we remove that. Just being careful of those clip leads there, of course I've got 300 odd volts on them. But that's maximum volume pretty much. So that was the main thing I wanted to check. I'm still not sure if this radio is working 100%. Doesn't seem to be the best on AM, but yeah, it was amazing what I could pick up on shortwave. But I guess possibly if since this speaker's so stuffed, I could almost pull the coil off this and mount it in there or something as a possibility. Or I might, now that I know this needs this thing, I'll keep an eye out for another old valve radio. They do turn up at the tip shops and stuff quite regularly and don't seem to be very popular with people, usually because they're in very poor condition. And I mean, I've wasted a couple of hours on this one at least for not a lot of results, but at least we got the thing resurrected. I sort of know what that part does. And oh yeah, the other thing, let's test this motor. I'm just going to put this thing back together. I did have a look at, you can sand the old paint off the case, which is all cracked, the old varnishy stuff. But I'm not sure I can be bothered. It's not really that great a looking radio to start with, so I'm not sure it's worth tidying it all up, only to have a fairly bland looking thing anyway. Might just keep it as it is for now. And we can measure across these motor windings. Should be pretty low resistance, 300 ohms, so I'd say that's a goer. But I might as well, since this whole thing goes, give it one more spin for old time's sake, I guess. Since it may be the end of the line for it, really. But that BSR motor might be useful to someone and something. I generally don't touch record players that are that old, they're just not very interesting. And yeah, hard to get parts for, things like this idler. It probably still works, that idler, but it's not looking the best, cracks in it and all the rest. Yeah, I reckon if you bent that hard enough it would snap off. Where's our speed selector? Oh, if we probably got to move that out of the way a bit. That still does the 3 speeds on the pulley there. Although it's a little high on that one. What's that little metal piece sticking out? A bit weird. That one lines up. That one lines up. Bottom one is a little high, I think. It's hitting on a little pointy bit there. So you can adjust that here. Someone probably hasn't set the height quite right. What have we got under? Oh, this is the lever that sets it. Yeah, so that makes sense. It's a bit stiff now. Why doesn't that one? Oh, it's sitting on that. Surprisingly works well. I'd say this machine has probably been used a bit in more recent times, would be my guess. Given how free everything's on it, all the pots and everything, and the record player. Well, that isn't doing anything. No, she's seized. Probably should have checked that before I put power on it. Oh, now I've got it loose. Never a good idea to start up a motor that's seized. Oh, there we go. Bit noisy. Not surprised if it was seized. It means the bearings are dry. Plenty of torque. That's got a heap of torque. I reckon I can't even stop that one. Oh, just. Can I get that to do anything? Depending how much the platter turned it in there, I guess. Oops. Yeah, that's hitting on that lumpy bit. And still making a clunking noise, so it's not the lumpy bit. So I think that's the idler's definitely got a lumpy patch in it. Probably wouldn't matter too much for the record speed with a heavy metal platter. Oh, there it is. There's the dent where it's been sitting against the motor for who knows how long. That's got quite a dent in it. There's just some disc thing under there that slides there. I'm not sure what. Oh, it can slide back and forwards in the metal piece that holds it and sets the height. That's on. Is it on a bit of a spring or something? Seems to spring back either way. But yeah, very ancient bit of old BSR technology there. I don't think it has anything on it other than BSR England. Was it Birmingham Sound Recordings? I think they were. Those rubber mounts are in surprisingly good condition, so maybe they've been changed. But anyway, we know that's a good motor, so I'm not hanging on to a piece of scrap metal there. And it actually looks like this machine was only sold a couple of years probably before they put out the micro groove ones, from what I'm seeing in adverts. So these people probably weren't too happy with the fact they bought one, and then yeah, a couple of years later, around 1950, I think they started putting them out with micro groove with the 45 and 33. So, and probably all the new artists and stuff would have come out on those records, so they would have wanted to upgrade it. Which is why you see the mess you see. Don't know where they got this BSR thing from. Maybe you could just buy this piece with the platter or something. I assume the platter is not the original, but maybe it's an original platter on this new shaft. More likely that platter would have come with this thing, but you could probably just buy this piece from somewhere and upgrade it. Possibly they would have got it, you know, if they did it years later after these things came out, maybe they could have got one out of a second-hand one and upgraded. It might have been 20 years old at the time or something, so they might have got another broken radiogram or record player and pinched it out of that, or just maybe bought a cheap standalone one and used the parts out of that. Who knows what they did, but someone's obviously upgraded at some stage. Didn't do a very good job of it, but it probably did the job for them. At least they could play your micro groove records. But this thing's basically running. I don't think I can do much more with it. You'd really need a bit of test gear to test the RF stage and see if it's as sensitive as it should be. It does sound like it is sort of hashy. You've got a lot of hash in the sound, so it's not just interference. I don't think it's actually not picking up so well. But I'm pretty sure this uses all the same front end valves and stuff, so I don't think it's any of those. I think all this front end part, yeah, it all comes after the switch. So it's basically, could be that switch is a bit dicky. There's a capacitor there, there's a few other caps. Maybe one of these caps in the AM section is not the best. Certainly possible it's something like that. But I don't really fancy checking all of those, since this thing's not really a restoration video or a viable restoration generally. It was just a cheap old thing I thought would be interesting to play around with. I really should learn a little bit about valves. And it goes to show that it's the usual sort of culprits, things like inductors and stuff that get damaged or chewed on by something, or corrosion in them. And they're only very fine wires, about as thin as your hair or something, or maybe a little bit thicker, but not much. So it doesn't take much to damage them. All the valves seem to be working in it, other than this one's a potentially faulty one or something. Radiotron made in Australia. But like I say, that circuit probably exists somewhere in one of the old electronics magazines or something. These sort of boxes were very common for hobbyists to build into. But that's all I'm going to do with this one. I probably should find a couple of lamps maybe, but I'm not even going to put the mains cord on it, so I don't think I'll worry for the moment. Otherwise I'd put a couple of lamps in it so it at least lit up in the box and looked alright, but you're even missing a couple of knobs they're probably more valuable than the rest of it. That one's scratched, so it's not much good anyway, and a piece just fell off it. That one is actually in good condition, I think. Pretty good. So unless I'm getting a new set of knobs, it's not even going to make a very good display piece, unfortunately. But you could have it sitting somewhere just with this lit up. That's the other option, is just hook a couple of lamps up to light the glass up, and just sit it somewhere on a shelf with those lit up. And there's no point, I'm not going to listen to the radio anyway. The record player doesn't work, so it could make a good display like that. Something I'll think about doing, but it's not the nicest thing. It's very big and not in the best condition, so in some ways you're probably better off just scrapping the chassis out of it for parts and getting rid of the cabinet almost. But I'll hang on to it for now and decide what to do with it later, and I'll get onto this AirZone radio, which I've already started having a look at, and looks like it might have quite a few issues as well, but it's in a much poorer condition. It's a late 30s one. But it is kind of fun to play around with a few of these valve things, because I never really did it, never really had any interest. They weren't worth doing up to sell second hand or anything. And the technology was sort of long gone, well, not long gone, but it was sort of obsolete by the time I learned anything about electronics. I did pull some of this old stuff apart, because of course you'd find it lying around the place on curbside rubbish or dumped in the bush somewhere. Plenty of old valve TVs around in those days, all over the place. I mean, these radios used to be all over the rubbish tip if you wanted them, but we never bothered used to salvage anything like that. I think I did bring one Chrysler home once, one of those later long sort of mantle in a white case, quite an iconic, a 60s one I think they were, and it worked fine, and I used it for a few years and then I threw it out again. Used it in the shed a bit, but I don't think I even listened to it much. But a lot of them were still in working order back then, the 60s ones, or late 50s. But there just was no use, no point in getting them. They're big, they're power hungry. Most of them didn't work 100%, need a bit of refurbishment. So not really worth doing much with. Now the way you should have got this out of the cabinet, and I was reading the manual but I didn't take much notice of it, is you've got two of these captive nuts in the base of this thing. Normally you wouldn't have to deal with these red wires everywhere. So you're meant to screw those two to this bit of wood and leave them, if you're disassembling, you leave these two screws in there, and that way this whole assembly can be dropped out from under the cabinet. And it's just these outer four screws that you actually had to undo. And I don't know if this has to be slid to a particular position. There's a bit of adjustment there. I guess we'll just go where the old washer's sat. Probably lines the radio up perfectly. And of course take your knobs off again and poke. You've got to sort of angle this in, I guess, to get the knobs through the front. But you weren't actually meant to take this bit of wood off. So yeah, now we'll screw those other four pieces in there, take those knobs off, and that's how you're meant to do it. But anyway, we'll put this thing back together, so thanks for watching.